food of slaves on plantations. Ever wonder how a cuisine born from scraps and hardship could become a symbol of cultural pride and celebration? Join us as we unravel the captivating story of soul food, a culinary journey that began in the shadow of slavery and blossomed into a vibrant expression of African-American resilience and creativity. Get ready to explore the surprising origins of your favorite comfort foods and discover how ingenuity and determination transformed adversity into a delicious legacy. Welcome to the fascinating world of soul food, where every bite tells a story. West and Central Africa culinary traditions. Let's journey back in time to explore the fascinating culinary heritage of West and Central Africa, the foundation upon which soul food was built. Yams, okra, black-eyed peas, and rice, these were the staples that nourished communities, the heart and soul of countless meals. Imagine the aromas wafting through the air as skilled cooks prepared one-pot stews, blending spices and palm oil into flavorful creations. These culinary traditions were more than just sustenance, they were expressions of culture, community, and creativity. They were brought across the Atlantic during the transatlantic slave trade, transforming and adapting to new landscapes and circumstances. This culinary legacy is a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of African people, a rich tapestry of flavors that continues to shape our foodways today. Understanding these roots helps us appreciate the depth and complexity of soul food, a cuisine born out of hardship yet brimming with flavor and cultural significance. It's a story of survival, adaptation, and the enduring power of food to connect us to our past. Adapting to America. Imagine the unimaginable, being torn from your homeland, your family, your entire way of life, and transported across the ocean into slavery. Yet, amidst the brutality and dehumanization, enslaved Africans carried with them something precious, their cultural knowledge, including their culinary traditions. Though stripped of their freedom, they refused to let their heritage be erased. They found ways to adapt their beloved dishes to the harsh realities of their new environment. With limited resources and unfamiliar ingredients, they ingeniously transformed scraps and cast-offs into meals that nourished both body and soul. This culinary adaptation was a testament to their resilience, their determination to hold on to their identity in the face of unimaginable adversity. It was a powerful act of resistance, a way of preserving the heritage for future generations. The food they created, born out of necessity and creativity, became a source of comfort, community, and cultural continuity. It laid the groundwork for what we now know as soul food, a cuisine that reflects the strength, perseverance, and enduring spirit of African Americans. Plantation rations. Life on plantations was a relentless cycle of labor and deprivation, with food rations designed to provide just enough sustenance to keep enslaved people working. Imagine being handed a meager portion of cornmeal, salted fish, and a few scraps of vegetables. That was often the entirety of a month's food allowance. Frederick Douglass, a powerful voice against slavery, described this stark reality in his autobiography, revealing how a mere 8 pounds of pork or fish and a single bushel of cornmeal were expected to sustain an adult for an entire month. These rations were barely enough to survive on, let alone thrive. The constant hunger gnawed at their bellies, a physical manifestation of the dehumanizing system they were trapped in. Despite these meager provisions, enslaved people found ways to make the most of what they had. They supplemented their rations with foraged foods, hunted game when possible, and cultivated small gardens whenever they could. Their resourcefulness and ingenuity in the face of such adversity speak volumes about their strength and determination. Their ability to create flavorful and nourishing meals from scraps and limited ingredients is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. It's a reminder of the hardships they faced and the indomitable spirit that allowed them to persevere. Resourcefulness, adaptability. Despite the meager rations provided by slave owners, enslaved Africans demonstrated incredible resourcefulness and adaptability in finding ways to nourish themselves. Imagine them venturing into the woods, their eyes scanning the forest floor for edible plants, their hands carefully gathering wild greens like dandelion and pokeweed, which were often dismissed as mere weeds by their oppressors. They honed their hunting skills, trapping small game to add protein to their diets, and cast their lines into rivers and streams, hoping for a catch to supplement their meals. Those fortunate enough to have small garden plots poured their hearts into cultivating vegetables, these patches of land becoming oases of sustenance and symbols of resilience. Perhaps most striking was their ingenuity in transforming discarded animal parts into culinary treasures. Intestines, often tossed aside, were meticulously cleaned and transformed into chitterlings, while pigs' feet, ears, and tails became flavorful additions to their meals. This resourcefulness, born out of necessity, not only ensured their survival but also laid the foundation for many beloved soul food staples we enjoy today. Chitterlings. Let's delve into the fascinating history of chitterlings, a dish deeply rooted in the resourcefulness and culinary ingenuity of enslaved Africans. Imagine the meticulous process of cleaning and preparing pig intestines, transforming what was often discarded into a flavorful and nourishing meal. This labor-intensive task required skill and patience, as the intestines needed to be thoroughly cleaned and cooked to become edible. But the effort was well worth it, as chitterlings provided a valuable source of sustenance and flavor. Enslaved cooks, drawing on their culinary heritage, seasoned the chitterlings with herbs and spices, creating a savory dish that offered comfort and a taste of home. Over time, chitterlings became a staple in soul food, a testament to the ability of enslaved people to make the most of limited resources and transform them into culinary treasures. Today, chitterlings remain a cherished dish, particularly in the southern United States, where they are enjoyed as a connection to heritage and a celebration of African American culinary traditions. Ham hocks. Let's explore the culinary journey of ham hocks, another example of how enslaved Africans transformed overlooked ingredients into flavorful staples. Imagine the ham hock, the lower part of a pig's leg, often discarded by slaveholders due to its too fatty nature and lack of muscle. Yet, in the hands of resourceful cooks, this seemingly undesirable cut became a culinary gem. Enslaved people recognized the potential of ham hocks, understanding that their slow-cooked richness could elevate simple dishes to new heights. They simmered ham hocks for hours, extracting their deep, smoky flavor and infusing it into stews, soups, and greens. This practice became a cornerstone of Southern cooking, where ham hocks continue to play a starring role in traditional dishes like collard greens, black-eyed peas, and beans. The addition of a ham hock transforms these humble ingredients, adding a layer of savory depth and complexity that is both comforting and satisfying. It's a testament to the culinary ingenuity of enslaved people, who found ways to create delicious and flavorful meals from ingredients that others dismissed. Pig's feet. Let's continue our exploration of soul food's origins with pig's feet, another example of how enslaved cooks transformed seemingly undesirable cuts of meat into culinary treasures. Imagine the patience and skill required to transform these tough, bony appendages into tender, flavorful morsels. Enslaved people mastered the art of slow-cooking pig's feet, braising or boiling them for hours until the meat yielded to the fork. They expertly seasoned the pig's feet with a blend of spices and herbs, enhancing their flavor and creating a dish that was both satisfying and deeply flavorful. This culinary tradition took root in Southern and African American communities, where pig's feet continue to be enjoyed as a delicacy, a testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of those who came before us. Tripe. Our journey through the resourceful culinary traditions of enslaved Africans continues with tripe, the edible lining of a cow's stomach. Imagine this ingredient, often discarded by slave owners, becoming a source of nourishment and flavor in the hands of skilled cooks. Enslaved people recognized the potential of tripe, understanding that its unique texture and ability to absorb flavors could be harnessed to create delicious and satisfying meals. They developed techniques to tenderize the tripe, often slow cooking it for hours until it reached a palatable consistency. Tripe found its way into stews and soups, adding a rich, savory depth to these dishes. This culinary tradition transcended geographical boundaries, with tripe becoming a common ingredient in various cuisines around the world, including African and Latin American culinary traditions. It's a testament to the ingenuity and adaptability of enslaved cooks, who found ways to utilize every part of the animal and create flavorful dishes from ingredients that others overlooked. Oxtails. Imagine the oxtail, the tail of cattle, once considered an undesirable cut of meat, becoming a cornerstone of soul food cuisine. Enslaved cooks recognized the hidden potential of these bony, high-fat appendages. They understood that with patience and slow cooking, the oxtail could be transformed into a culinary masterpiece. They simmered oxtails for hours, coaxing out their rich, savory flavors and tenderizing the meat until it fell off the bone. This culinary innovation gave rise to oxtail stew, a hearty and flavorful dish that has become a beloved staple in soul food. The oxtail stew represents the ability of enslaved people to transform humble ingredients into culinary treasures. It's a testament to their creativity, resourcefulness, and determination to find nourishment and flavor even in the face of adversity. Today, oxtail stew continues to be enjoyed across generations, a delicious reminder of the culinary legacy passed down through families and communities. Organ meats. Our exploration of soul food's origins takes us to the realm of organ meats, another example of how enslaved cooks transformed often overlooked ingredients into nourishing and flavorful dishes. Imagine the resourcefulness required to take organ meats like liver, kidneys, and heart, often included in the meager rations provided to enslaved people, and turn them into culinary creations. These nutrient-rich cuts, though sometimes viewed as less desirable, held the potential for delicious meals when prepared with skill and creativity. Enslaved cooks mastered techniques to tenderize and season organ meats, masking any strong flavors and enhancing their palatability. Liver and onions, for instance, became a popular dish that continues to be enjoyed in some African American households today. It's a testament to the culinary legacy passed down through generations, a reminder of the ability to find nourishment and flavor even in the most challenging circumstances. What's your favorite soul food dish, and what memories or feelings does it evoke for you? Share your culinary stories in the comments. Cooking methods, seasonings. Let's explore the ingenious cooking methods and vibrant seasonings that shaped the culinary landscape of enslaved Africans. Imagine a kitchen where resourcefulness reigned supreme, where making something out of nothing became a testament to resilience and creativity. The harsh realities of plantation life demanded efficiency, and one-pot meals rose to the occasion. Picture a single pot simmering over an open fire, transforming a few simple ingredients into a flavorful, filling stew, a culinary symphony where tough cuts of meat and vegetables danced together in harmony. This time-honored tradition, with roots deep in West African culinary heritage, became a cornerstone of soul food. Seasonings played a transformative role, elevating humble ingredients to new heights. Hot peppers ignited the palate, onions and garlic added layers of savory depth, and bacon grease or lard imparted richness and precious calories. These bold flavors were not merely a matter of taste. They were a necessity, a way to make the most of limited resources, and a powerful connection to the vibrant culinary traditions of their African homeland. This ingenuity and adaptability laid the foundation for the soul food we know and love today, a cuisine that celebrates resilience, creativity, and the enduring power of flavor to nourish both body and soul. It's a reminder that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit can find ways to create beauty, meaning, and deliciousness. Preservation techniques. Let's delve into the ingenious preservation techniques that played a crucial role in the culinary lives of enslaved Africans. Imagine the importance of making limited food supplies last, stretching them across seasons to ensure sustenance throughout the year. Smoking and salting became essential methods for preserving precious meats, while pickling transformed vegetables into flavorful, long-lasting additions to their diet. Drying herbs captured their essence, ensuring a touch of flavor could be added to meals even when fresh herbs were scarce. These preservation methods not only extended the life of their food, but also shaped the development of iconic soul food dishes like country ham and chow chow relish. At the heart of their culinary practices was the open hearth or fire pit, a source of warmth and the engine for creating flavorful meals. Cast iron cookware, especially the trusty Dutch oven, became an indispensable tool. These sturdy pots could withstand long hours of cooking, their heat-holding properties transforming tough cuts of meat into tender morsels. The versatility of cast iron, its ability to fry, bake, and stew, made it a cornerstone of soul food preparation. It's important to remember that these adaptations were not merely about survival. They were powerful acts of cultural preservation. By holding onto cooking methods from their homelands and ingeniously utilizing available ingredients, enslaved African Americans ensured their culinary traditions endured, even under the most oppressive circumstances. The importance of chickens. Let's explore the fascinating role chickens played in the lives of enslaved Africans, revealing a complex interplay of resourcefulness, resilience, and cultural significance. Imagine the small but powerful act of owning chickens, a seemingly minor allowance within the oppressive system of slavery that held profound implications. While denied ownership of larger livestock like cattle, enslaved people were often permitted to keep chickens. This seemingly insignificant concession had a profound impact on their diets and their ability to carve out a sliver of economic autonomy. Chickens, considered less valuable than other livestock, were seen as a way to reduce plantation costs by allowing enslaved individuals to supplement their own food supply. However, this minor allowance had a much deeper significance. The ability to raise and sell chickens and eggs provided a small but vital source of income, empowering enslaved people to purchase additional food, clothing, and in some cases, even contribute to their own freedom. This newfound economic freedom fueled a sense of pride and independence. Chicken, once a symbol of their limited means, transformed into a culinary centerpiece, gracing tables during Sunday dinners and church gatherings. Fried chicken, in particular, became a symbol of resourcefulness and culinary skill, a testament to their ability to create something delicious and celebratory from humble ingredients. This tradition continues to resonate today, with chicken holding a special place in soul food cuisine as a celebratory food, a reminder of the ingenuity and resilience of those who came before us. It's a story of how a seemingly small allowance sparked a culinary and cultural legacy that continues to nourish and inspire us today. Soul food, a cuisine born of struggle. Let's trace the evolution of soul food, a cuisine born out of struggle and resilience, as it transitioned from the plantations of the South to become a symbol of cultural pride and identity. Imagine the period following the Civil War, as formerly enslaved African Americans carried their culinary traditions with them, sharing their flavors and techniques with a wider audience. Many found work as cooks during Reconstruction, introducing their beloved dishes to new communities. Then, during the Great Migration of the 20th century, millions of African Americans journeyed from the rural South to urban centers in the North and West, bringing their culinary heritage along. Restaurants and food establishments sprung up, offering a taste of home and comfort to those who had left their roots behind. The term soul food emerged in the 1960s during the Black Power movement, a powerful declaration of cultural identity and a celebration of a cuisine forged in the fires of adversity. It was about reclaiming a culinary heritage that had been denigrated and overlooked, transforming it into a source of pride and empowerment. Soul food became more than just sustenance. It became a symbol of resilience, a connection to history, and a delicious expression of African American identity. It was a way to honor the past, celebrate the present, and nourish the future. Today, soul food continues to be a source of comfort, community, and cultural pride, a testament to the enduring power of food to tell stories, connect generations, and celebrate the rich tapestry of human experience. It's a cuisine that invites us to savor not only its delicious flavors, but also the stories of struggle, resilience, and creativity that it embodies. Comment 1 if you enjoyed the content above. And don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications to follow our videos. Thank you. Soul food classics. Let's take a closer look at some of the beloved classics that grace soul food tables, tracing their roots back to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of enslaved cooks in the antebellum South. Cornbread. Let's delve into the fascinating history of cornbread, a soul food staple with roots that stretch back to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of enslaved Africans. Imagine the simple yet profound act of creating ash cakes, a precursor to modern cornbread, cooked directly on hot stones or nestled in the warm ashes of a fire. These humble beginnings laid the foundation for the golden, crispy-edged cornbread we cherish today. Corn, a readily available grain, became a cornerstone of their diet, providing sustenance and nourishment. Enslaved cooks mastered the art of transforming cornmeal into a variety of dishes, including the simple yet satisfying ash cake. This culinary tradition evolved over time, with the introduction of cast iron cookware and ovens, allowing for the creation of the cornbread we know and love today. Its crumbly texture, subtle sweetness, and versatility as both a side dish and an ingredient in other recipes make it a beloved staple in soul food cuisine. Greens. These leafy greens, packed with essential vitamins and minerals, became a cornerstone of their diet, supplementing the often inadequate rations provided by slaveholders. They understood the importance of these nutrient-rich vegetables, recognizing their ability to nourish and sustain their bodies. To enhance the flavor of these greens, enslaved cooks developed the ingenious method of cooking them with pork, infusing them with savory depth and richness. This culinary technique, born out of necessity and creativity, became a hallmark of soul food cooking, a testament to the transformative summer of flavor. Hoppin' John, a flavorful blend of black-eyed peas and rice, has roots that stretch back to both African and enslaved culinary traditions. For many enslaved Africans, rice was a familiar crop, cultivated in their homelands and brought with them across the Atlantic. Combined with black-eyed peas, a readily available and nutrient-rich legume, it became a cornerstone of their diet, providing sustenance and nourishment. This culinary creation not only provided a delicious and filling meal, but also gave rise to a cherished New Year's tradition. Eating black-eyed peas on New Year's Day became a symbol of hope and prosperity, a way to invite good fortune into the new year. This tradition, deeply rooted in the history of soul food, continues to be celebrated today, a testament to the enduring power of food to connect us to our past and shape our cultural practices. Sweet potato pie, often referred to as the sister to pumpkin pie, has roots in the abundant sweet potato crops of the South and the kitchens where enslaved cooks worked their culinary magic. These skilled cooks, drawing on their knowledge of European custard pies, ingeniously adapted the recipe, replacing pumpkin with a familiar and readily available sweet potato. The result was a culinary masterpiece, a uniquely African-American dessert that has become a beloved staple in soul food cuisine. Sweet potato pie, with its smooth, creamy filling and delicate crust, embodies the spirit of innovation and the ability to create something truly special from humble ingredients. Gumbo. Let's talk about gumbo, a beloved dish that embodies the diverse flavors and culinary traditions of the South. Gumbo is like a delicious melting pot, bringing together influences from Africa, France, and Spain. Imagine a rich, flavorful stew, often starting with a roux, a mix of fat and flour that gives it a wonderful texture. Okra, a vegetable with African roots, often stars in gumbo, adding its unique taste and a bit of a thickening magic. Andouille sausage, a spicy smoked sausage with French origins, brings a bold kick to the party. Seafood like shrimp, crab, or oysters contribute a sweet and savory flavor from the sea. Rice, a staple in many cultures, provides a comforting base, soaking up all those amazing flavors. The beauty of gumbo is that it can be different depending on who's making it and where it's from. Cajun gumbos from Louisiana might be spicy with seafood, while Creole gumbos might feature chicken and sausage. Each bowl tells a story of its own. In the South, you'll find gumbo on menus everywhere, but some places are especially famous for it. Commander's Palace in New Orleans, for example, is known for its elegant Creole cuisine, and their gumbo is a true standout. Fried chicken. Let's talk about fried chicken, a true icon of Southern cooking that's loved far and wide. Imagine crispy, golden brown skin giving way to juicy, tender meat, seasoned just right and bursting with flavor. Fried chicken is a dish that holds a special place in many cultures, but it's especially significant in African American cuisine, where it has a long and fascinating history. During times of hardship, enslaved people often had to make do with the less desirable cuts of meat, like chicken. But through their ingenuity and culinary skills, they transformed this simple ingredient into a culinary masterpiece. Fried chicken became a symbol of resourcefulness and celebration, a way to make the most of what they had and create something truly delicious. Today, you can find fried chicken on menus all over the South and beyond. But some places have become legendary for their versions of this classic dish. Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles in Los Angeles, for example, is a cultural landmark that celebrates the deep connection between fried chicken and African American culinary traditions. Their famous combination of crispy fried chicken and fluffy waffles is a testament to the enduring appeal of this dish and its ability to bring people together. Cabbage stew. Let's explore the humble yet flavorful world of cabbage stew, a dish that speaks volumes about the resourcefulness and culinary creativity of enslaved cooks. Cabbage stew is a testament to the ability to transform simple, readily available ingredients into a nourishing and satisfying meal, a skill honed out of necessity during challenging times. Imagine a steaming bowl of cabbage stew, its broth infused with the flavors of slow-cooked cabbage, often accompanied by other vegetables like potatoes, carrots, and onions. Smoked meats, like ham hocks or bacon, were often added to enhance the flavor and provide a bit of richness, a testament to the ingenuity of making the most of limited resources. Cabbage stew is a dish that embodies the spirit of soul food, making something delicious and nourishing from humble ingredients. It's a reminder of the resilience and creativity that have shaped African American culinary traditions, the ability to find flavor and comfort in even the most challenging circumstances. While not as widely known as some other soul food classics, cabbage stew still holds a special place in the hearts of many. You might find it on the menu at soul food restaurants, often as a daily special or a comforting addition to a larger meal. Black-eyed peas. Let's talk about black-eyed peas, a humble legume with a rich history and a special place in Southern cuisine, especially within the African American community. These little beans are more than just a tasty side dish. They're a symbol of hope, prosperity, and good luck, especially when enjoyed on New Year's Day. Imagine a bowl of creamy, flavorful black-eyed peas, often seasoned with a bit of smoky ham hock or bacon for extra richness. They're a simple dish, but one that carries a lot of meaning and tradition. The practice of eating black-eyed peas on New Year's Day for good luck dates back centuries, possibly originating in West Africa before making its way to the American South. For many, it's a way to start the year off on a positive note, with hopes for abundance and good fortune. If you're looking for a taste of this New Year's tradition, you can find black-eyed peas on menus at Southern diners and soul food restaurants all across the country. They're often served as a side dish, alongside collard greens, cornbread, and other soul food favorites. So, whether you're looking to embrace a time-honored tradition or simply enjoy a delicious and nutritious dish, black-eyed peas are a great choice. Have you ever tried cooking a traditional soul food recipe? We'd love to hear about your experiences and any tips you might have. Soul food today, the future. Let's explore the vibrant landscape of soul food today, its enduring legacy, and its evolution as it continues to nourish both body and soul. Imagine soul food restaurants across the nation, serving as culinary guardians of this rich tradition. These family-run establishments are more than just places to eat. They are living museums of African American food history, preserving recipes and cooking styles passed down through generations. However, the traditional richness of soul food, while undeniably delicious, has raised health concerns in recent times. The high fat, salt, and sugar content have been linked to health disparities within the African American community. This has sparked a movement towards healthier approaches to soul food preparation. Chefs and home cooks alike are embracing innovative techniques to retain the soulful flavors while reducing the reliance on unhealthy ingredients. Imagine smoked turkey lending its smoky essence to collard greens instead of pork, or the delightful crispness of baked chicken replacing its fried counterpart. Even as it evolves, soul food remains an integral part of African American culture, gracing tables at family reunions, church gatherings, and celebrations. The act of preparing and sharing this food strengthens community ties and deepens the connection to heritage. Soul food's influence extends beyond the African American community, its flavors and techniques becoming woven into the broader American culinary tapestry. Dishes like fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and collard greens have become beloved by people of all backgrounds, a testament to the universal appeal of soul food. From its origins in the adversity of slavery to its vibrant presence today, soul food's journey is a remarkable testament to the human spirit's ability to create beauty and nourishment from hardship.
What if everything you thought you knew about white women in the antebellum South was wrong? Rather than being passive figures, they were active players in the slave economy, co-conspirators who bought, sold, and owned enslaved people. Astonishingly, nearly 40% of slave owners were white women, and their power grew with each enslaved person they controlled. For these women, owning slaves became intertwined with their identity, often taking precedence over land ownership. Discover the untold stories of how white women navigated and shaped the brutal reality of slavery, revealing a complex legacy of power and complicity. Unmasking the antebellum era. Let's journey back to a pivotal period in American history, the antebellum era. This term, meaning before the war, refers to the decades leading up to the Civil War, roughly from the end of the War of 1812 to 1861. It was a time of immense change and growth for the young nation, with factories springing up, settlers pushing westward, and the economy transforming. But beneath this surface of progress lay a dark and brutal reality: slavery. The antebellum South was built on the backs of enslaved Africans and their descendants, who were forced to toil in fields and endure unimaginable hardships. Initially, many in the South saw slavery as a necessary evil, a temporary system they hoped would eventually fade away. However, as the demand for cotton and other crops exploded, the South's dependence on slave labor only deepened. Something truly disturbing happened as the antebellum era progressed. Southern leaders, intellectuals, and even some religious figures began to actively defend slavery. They twisted their arguments, claiming that it wasn't just necessary, but actually a positive good for both enslavers and the enslaved. This justification was used to silence growing opposition to slavery, especially from the newly formed abolitionist movement. The internal slave trade also boomed during this time. The U.S. had outlawed the importation of enslaved people from Africa, making those already in the country incredibly valuable. Farmers in older states like Virginia saw an opportunity to profit by selling enslaved individuals to plantations further south and west, tearing families apart and fueling the expansion of slavery into new territories. While most Southern farmers owned only a few enslaved people, the wealthy elite controlled vast plantations with hundreds of enslaved individuals. Their wealth and influence translated into significant political power, shaping the South's economy and society. The antebellum era was marked by intense political debates. States' rights, the expansion of slavery into new territories, and the growing divide between the North and South created a powder keg ready to explode. These tensions ultimately erupted into the Civil War, a conflict that would forever change the course of American history. The hidden abuse, blackmail slaves, and elite white women. While the horrors of slavery are well documented, including the sexual exploitation of black women by white slave owners. A lesser-known aspect is the abuse suffered by black men at the hands of elite white women. We need to shine a light on this hidden chapter to fully understand the brutality of the system. We often hear about the planter class, the wealthy white men who owned vast plantations and controlled the lives of enslaved people. But what about the women in this elite class? These planter class white women enjoyed a privileged position in Southern society, benefiting directly from the forced labor of enslaved individuals. While their husbands held legal ownership over the enslaved population, these women wielded significant power within the plantation household. They were responsible for managing the domestic sphere, including overseeing the work of enslaved people assigned to household duties. This position of authority, combined with the pervasive racism of the time, created an environment ripe for abuse. It's important to remember that enslaved individuals had no legal protections against any form of violence or exploitation. They were seen as property, not human beings with rights. This made black men particularly vulnerable to the whims of planter-class white women, who could inflict physical and psychological harm without fear of consequences. Historians are increasingly uncovering evidence of this abuse. Stories of beatings, sexual assault, and psychological torment inflicted by white women on enslaved black men. These accounts often remain hidden in the shadows, buried in diaries, court records, and whispered family histories. Power, gender, and exploitation. Slavery was a complex system that went beyond racial oppression. It also reinforced gender hierarchies, shaping the roles and power dynamics of both men and women within Southern society. While planter-class white women were expected to conform to societal norms of femininity, they wielded considerable power within the confines of slavery. These women were not simply passive bystanders. They actively participated in upholding the institution. They managed households, oversaw enslaved laborers, and even held legal ownership over enslaved individuals. Let's pause and consider this for a moment. In the antebellum South, white women were denied basic rights that we take for granted today. They couldn't vote, they couldn't hold public office, and their property became their husbands upon marriage. Yet, they possessed the power to buy, sell, and own other human beings, a stark illustration of the twisted logic of slavery. This ownership granted them immense authority over enslaved people, including black men. They could dictate their daily routines, issue punishments, and even control their access to food and basic necessities. This power dynamic created an environment where abuse could flourish, hidden behind the facade of Southern gentility. Understanding the role of planter-class white women in perpetuating slavery is crucial to understanding the full scope of its brutality. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that women, too, were complicit in this system of oppression, using their power to inflict harm on those deemed less than human. By acknowledging this often overlooked aspect of slavery, we can gain a more nuanced understanding of its impact on individuals and society as a whole. They were her property. White women as active participants in slavery. For a long time, the historical narrative around slavery often portrayed white women as passive bystanders, sheltered from the harsh realities of the system. However, historian Stephanie Jones-Rogers challenges this view in her groundbreaking book, They Were Her Property: White Women as Slave Owners in the American South. Jones-Rogers argues that white women were far from passive. They were active and willing participants in slavery, using it to build their own economic power and social standing. Her research draws on a powerful source often overlooked by previous historians: interviews with formerly enslaved people conducted during the Great Depression. These first-hand accounts reveal a very different picture of white women's involvement in slavery. Jones-Rogers discovered that white girls were often trained from a young age to be slave owners. They received lessons in slave management and discipline, and some were even allowed to inflict physical punishment on enslaved individuals. Imagine this. young girls receiving enslaved people as gifts, sometimes as young as 9 months old. These children grew up seeing other human beings as their personal property, a deeply disturbing reality. One particularly striking example comes from a court record where a woman recounts how her grandfather gave her an enslaved person as her own when she was just 9 months old. This demonstrates how deeply ingrained the concept of slave ownership was in Southern society, even influencing the lives of infants. As these girls grew into women, they carried this sense of entitlement and ownership with them. They actively participated in buying, selling, and managing enslaved people, often with great brutality. This wasn't just about economic gain. It was about asserting their power and dominance within a system built on racial hierarchy. Jones Rogers's work forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth about white women's complicity in slavery. It challenges us to reevaluate the traditional narrative and acknowledge the role they played in perpetuating this brutal system. By understanding the full extent of their involvement, we can gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of slavery and its lasting impact on American society. We must also recognize the resilience and resistance of enslaved people who endured unimaginable cruelty at the hands of both white men and women. By acknowledging these difficult truths, we can work towards a more honest and complete understanding of our history and strive for a future where all people are treated with dignity and respect. Sexual exploitation, a weapon of power and control. One of the most disturbing aspects of the abuse suffered by black male slaves was sexual exploitation by elite white women. While the dominant narrative often portrays these women as innocent victims of the patriarchal system, the reality is far more complex. Some actively engaged in non-consensual sexual relationships with enslaved men, exploiting their power and control in ways that inflicted immense harm. Harriet Jacobs, a formerly enslaved woman, provides a powerful example in her autobiography, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. She describes how some planters' daughters would deliberately choose enslaved men for sexual relationships, often selecting those who were most vulnerable and least likely to resist. Jacobs's account reveals a pattern of predatory behavior where these women used their position of authority to coerce enslaved men into sexual acts. These encounters cannot be considered consensual in any meaningful sense of the word. They were acts of sexual abuse, and in many cases, rape. It's important to recognize that planter-class white women, just like their male counterparts, had the power to sexually control and abuse enslaved people. They could use their position to demand sexual favors, and if those demands were refused, they could threaten to accuse the enslaved men of rape or attempted rape. This tactic was particularly insidious because it weaponized the very system designed to protect white women: patriarchy. By portraying themselves as vulnerable and in need of protection, they could manipulate white men into punishing enslaved black men, even if the accusations were false. These acts of sexual violence were not just about individual acts of cruelty. They were also a way for elite white women to assert their dominance over black bodies and reinforce the racial hierarchy that underpinned the institution of slavery. By dehumanizing and degrading black men, they further solidified their own position of power within the system. What new insights have you gained about the roles white women played in the slave economy, and how does this change your perception of history? Unraveling the motivation. Why did they abuse? Understanding the motivations behind the sexual abuse of enslaved black men by elite white women is a complex and challenging task. While there's no single answer, exploring potential factors can shed light on this disturbing aspect of history. It's possible that some women engaged in this abuse out of boredom or sexual frustration. However, it's also likely that at least on a subconscious level, it served as a means of compensating for their own lack of power within the patriarchal structure of Southern society. Planter-class women were essentially considered the property of their husbands, with limited control over their own lives and bodies. They lacked the same freedoms and opportunities afforded to men. Sexually exploiting enslaved individuals could have been a way for them to exert power and control in a world where they felt powerless. It's important to emphasize that this is not an attempt to excuse or justify their actions. Sexual abuse is never acceptable, regardless of the perpetrator's motivations. However, by examining the social and psychological context in which these abuses occurred, we can gain a deeper understanding of the factors that may have contributed to them. Planter-class women faced numerous restrictions on their freedom and mobility. They were often confined to the plantation, expected to uphold a strict code of conduct, and subjected to their husband's authority in nearly every aspect of their lives. Many were deeply unhappy with their lack of autonomy and the double standard that allowed their husbands to engage in extramarital affairs and sexual exploitation of enslaved women, while they were expected to remain silent and subservient. Historian Catherine Clinton describes these women as prisoners in disguise, highlighting their constrained lives and limited options. Knowing that their husbands fathered children with enslaved women was a source of humiliation and pain for many planter-class wives. This powerlessness, combined with the societal pressures to maintain a facade of respectability, may have led some women to seek a sense of control through the sexual exploitation of enslaved men. It's crucial to remember that this is just one possible explanation. The motivations behind these acts were likely complex and varied. However, by exploring the interplay of power, gender, and societal expectations, we can begin to unravel the dark history of abuse within the antebellum South and gain a more complete understanding of the human cost of slavery. Physical abuse. Beyond the whip of the male slaveholder. While the image of the brutal white male slaveholder wielding a whip is deeply ingrained in our understanding of slavery, it's crucial to remember that violence within the system was not limited to men. White women, despite their perceived fragility and societal constraints, also participated in acts of physical brutality against enslaved black men. By 1830, slavery had become deeply entrenched in the Southern economy and society. Enslaved Africans and their descendants were forced to labor in a wide range of settings, from small farms to large plantations, in urban and rural areas alike. Regardless of the specific context, the underlying principle of slavery remained the same. Enslaved people were considered property, not human beings. This dehumanization was enforced through violence, both actual and threatened. While white men were often the primary perpetrators of physical abuse, white women also played a significant role in maintaining this system of violence. They held positions of authority within the plantation household and were responsible for overseeing the work of enslaved individuals. This power dynamic gave them the opportunity to inflict physical harm on enslaved black men, often without fear of consequences. Their acts of brutality ranged from whippings and beatings to other forms of corporal punishment. These acts left lasting physical and psychological scars on the enslaved individuals who endured them. It's important to acknowledge this often overlooked aspect of slavery to gain a more complete understanding of the widespread violence that characterized the system. By recognizing the role of white women in perpetuating physical abuse, we can challenge the simplistic narrative that portrays them solely as passive victims. We must confront the uncomfortable reality that women, too, were capable of inflicting immense pain and suffering on others within the context of slavery. This understanding is essential for a more nuanced and accurate historical perspective. We must remember that the violence of slavery was not limited to a single gender or race. It was a systemic problem that permeated all aspects of Southern society, leaving a legacy of trauma that continues to impact us today. Slavery's psychological distortion and the racial hierarchy. The institution of slavery in the United States persisted for over 400 years, leaving a deep imprint on countless generations. It established a distorted social order, a system that allowed white Americans to dominate nearly every aspect of life. This wasn't just about forced labor, it was about controlling, dehumanizing, and terrorizing black communities. White authorities used brutal methods like lynchings, physical beatings, and cruel punishments as tools of control, sowing fear to maintain power. But the oppression didn't end with violence. Segregation followed in almost every sphere. Black communities were kept apart in neighborhoods, housing policies were designed to exclude, and even the criminal justice system targeted black individuals unfairly. Racism seeped into the fabric of American society, creating generations of privilege and wealth for white families who benefited materially and socially from this rigid racial hierarchy. Unveiling the truth. Interviews with formerly enslaved people. Historically, many scholars believed that white women didn't play a significant role in the institution of slavery. This perspective was largely shaped by a limited number of writings from a small group of Southern white women. However, Dr. Jones Rogers, an associate professor of history at the University of California, Berkeley, took a different approach. She turned to a powerful source: interviews with formerly enslaved individuals, which provided authentic insights into their experiences during slavery. One poignant example comes from the Federal Writers Project, part of the Works Progress Administration, where these interviews were conducted. One former enslaved person reflected on the harsh realities of their upbringing, saying, "We've been slaves all our lives, and mother was a slave, sister, father was a slave. They know nothing about read, write, all that. I know they teach as mine." This testimony highlights how deeply entrenched the legacy of slavery was within families. Another former enslaved individual recounted the dire living conditions, stating, "Other people didn't have no beds when they was slaves. They all slept on the floor. Just like a lot of wild people. We didn't know nothing. Didn't all it look in no book." These voices provide a clearer understanding of the complexities of slavery, revealing how it permeated both the lives of the enslaved and the everyday realities of white women involved in the system. How can understanding the complexities of power dynamics during slavery help us in our ongoing fight for racial equality today? Reproducing slave society and maintaining control. What many people may not realize is that Southern households actively worked to reproduce the institution of slavery. Their goal was to secure more enslaved individuals while keeping costs low. In these environments, white children, both boys and girls, observed their parents exercising control over black servants and learned to imitate those behaviors. They became astute, strategic, and aware of the power dynamics at play. They understood exactly how to navigate and reinforce their privileged positions. The book, They Were Her Property, offers vivid illustrations of life in the antebellum South. For instance, the opening chapter recounts a striking incident involving a 3-year-old girl named Lizzie Anna Burwell, who boldly demands her father to mutilate a black servant's ears and procure a new maid for her. This was not an isolated occurrence. Fathers often gifted their daughters more enslaved individuals, further entrenching the notion of ownership. Women in the South were legally able to claim property, which included ownership of black servants. However, due to the coverture doctrine, married women were typically not recognized as property owners, as the law viewed them and their husbands as a single legal entity, with the husband as the primary figure. In Stephanie McCurry's Women's War, Fighting and Surviving the American Civil War, this system of coverture is compared to the control that slaveholders exercised over their enslaved people. White women had limited legal rights, and their efforts to assert property claims often met with fierce resistance. Dr. Jones Rogers highlights that while coverture imposed limitations on married white women, Southern families frequently found ways to circumvent these restrictions. Families could transfer property to daughters or other female relatives, with the understanding that it would remain separate from any marital assets. In practice, Southern women established what we might recognize today as prenuptial agreements, alongside legal documents like deeds of trust and wills. These instruments allowed them to maintain control over property they already owned or would acquire during their marriages. In Louisiana, for example, women could petition the courts to create separate marital estates if their husbands mismanaged finances, such as overspending or accruing debt. This dual system revealed a complex reality in which a patriarchal society coexisted with a legal framework that granted white women considerable financial and legal influence. While the overarching power structure was undeniably male-dominated, women navigated these constraints with cunning and resourcefulness, demonstrating their ability to wield power within the confines of a society built on exploitation. The myth of the sheltered woman and the reality of the slave market. A pervasive myth exists that white women in the 19th century were sheltered and delicate, preserving their homes from the harsh realities of the outside world. However, this notion is far from accurate. In fact, numerous accounts from slave traders, travelers, merchants, city officials, and formerly enslaved individuals paint a different picture, revealing the active involvement of white women in the slave markets of that era. During the height of slavery, many white women participated in the buying and selling of enslaved people, often doing so from the comfort of their own homes. These transactions frequently occurred within local social networks, where women leveraged their connections to engage in the slave market. This reality contradicts the stereotype of women as passive observers of a system they benefited from. Instead, they played an integral role in sustaining the institution of slavery, making decisions that impacted the lives of those they enslaved and reinforcing the social and economic structures that supported the system. The market for enslaved wet nurses. White women wielded significant influence in shaping a distinct market for enslaved wet nurses, which became a common practice in the antebellum South. You might wonder why these women felt compelled to separate black mothers from their families to nurse their children. The answer lies in the demands placed on white women themselves. Many of them experienced the relentless cycle of childbirth, often feeling overwhelmed by the responsibilities of motherhood. One account even described these women as feeling like a slave in their own homes, burdened by the constant demands of caring for multiple infants. To alleviate this pressure, many white women turned to black women, purchasing or hiring enslaved wet nurses to take on the responsibilities of nursing and caring for their newborns. This arrangement allowed white mothers to reclaim their time and social lives, as they could attend events and engage in community activities while knowing their children were being cared for by someone else. The choice to employ an enslaved wet nurse not only underscored the harsh realities of separation for black families, but also highlighted the complex dynamics of power and privilege, as white women could exert control over both their own lives and the lives of those they enslaved. Please comment 1 to let me know you'll be watching this video until the end. Brutality and brothels. The brutality that some white women inflicted upon their enslaved individuals was shocking, with instances of violence so severe that their husbands sometimes had to intervene to restrain them. This cruelty was particularly pronounced among wealthy women, who often saw the enslaved not just as property, but also as a means to an end. These women invested in both enslaved men and women, compelling them to reproduce in order to increase their holdings of enslaved people. Take, for instance, the case of Henrietta Butler, who faced a harrowing existence as she was coerced into sexual relations with enslaved black men to bear children. Once she gave birth, she was then forced to nurse the child of her mistress. Unfortunately, Henrietta's experience was far from unique. Many enslaved women endured similar fates as they were subjected to the brutal realities of their circumstances. Martha Washington. When people think of George Washington, they often remember that he owned slaves who worked at his Mount Vernon estate. But fewer people realize the significant role his wife, Martha Washington, played in expanding the enslaved population there. When they married in 1759, George owned around 18 enslaved people, while Martha arrived with a staggering 84 enslaved individuals. This number may seem unusually high, but the fact that Martha owned enslaved people was not uncommon. Like her, many white women actively engaged in the slave trade and held substantial power over those they enslaved. In fact, owning enslaved people was often seen as an advantage for white women looking to secure a favorable marriage, as wealth in enslaved individuals was attractive to potential husbands. After marriage, these women frequently went to court to retain legal control over their slaves, and many were successful. For white women of that era, the institution of slavery ironically represented their own form of economic and social freedom, providing a path to independence and influence in a society that otherwise offered them few rights. The Horrors of Madame Lalaurie, a case study in extreme cruelty. The story of Madame Marie Delphine. Lalaurie stands as a chilling reminder of the depths of depravity that can exist within the human heart, particularly when fueled by unchecked power and racism. Her name has become synonymous with cruelty and sadism, a stark example of the horrific extremes to which the abuse of enslaved people could reach. Madame Lalaurie was a prominent socialite in 19th century New Orleans, known for her wealth and lavish lifestyle. However, behind the facade of elegance and refinement lurked a dark secret: the systematic torture and abuse of the enslaved people she owned. Accounts of her cruelty are truly horrifying. It's important to note that these are not simply rumors or exaggerations. The discovery of a hidden torture chamber in her mansion following a fire in 1834 confirmed the horrific truth of her crimes. Rescuers found enslaved people chained and mutilated, bearing the marks of prolonged and unimaginable suffering. The public outcry following the discovery of Lalaurie's torture chamber was immense, leading to a mob attack on her home and her eventual escape from New Orleans. While she was never brought to justice for her crimes, her story serves as a powerful indictment of the brutality of slavery and the unchecked power wielded by slave owners. The legacy of slavery. By the time we reached 1860, the landscape of slavery in the Americas was stark, with the United States holding nearly half of all enslaved Africans in the Western Hemisphere, approximately 4 to 6 million individuals. According to the 1860 census, 393,907 individuals owned million black individuals, which represented just about 1.5% of the white population. Although slavery officially ended in 1865, the trauma endured by African Americans extended far beyond their enslavement. The aftermath brought shattered hopes for equality and acceptance, especially during the turbulent years of the 1880s and 1890s, as prevailing attitudes about race shifted dramatically. As the Civil War approached and the prospect of emancipation loomed, many white women who were slave owners reacted defensively. They often made it known to Union authorities that they remained loyal, resisting the changes brought by the war. In fact, some women even sought financial compensation from the government when slavery was abolished in Washington, D.C. Others were determined to retain their property, resorting to strategies like refugeeing, where they relocated their enslaved individuals away from war-torn areas to maintain control. When the Civil War concluded, the dynamics shifted, but the control did not dissipate. Many white women engaged in negotiations regarding labor conditions with freed black individuals, often trying to retain authority over young African Americans by taking their children on as apprentices. While apprenticeship offered a glimmer of improvement compared to outright slavery, it still fell short of true freedom. Many ex-slaves found themselves working under the same masters or mistresses, often for meager wages and under strict terms. W.E.B. Du Bois poignantly captured this reality, noting that a freed person might stand a brief moment in the sun, only to be pushed back towards slavery, a brief reference to the temporary progress made by black communities in the Freedmen's Bureau in establishing schools and social support. However, this progress was swiftly undermined by the white Southern elite, including many white women. They enacted laws known as the Black Codes, designed with the intent to reinstate the obligations and restrictions of slavery. These codes effectively stripped black individuals of their voting rights and barred them from serving on juries or in state militias. In response, white men and women crafted a complex web of laws, such as contract and vagrancy laws, that created a system of control reminiscent of slavery. This led to the rise of peonage, a form of involuntary servitude based on alleged debt. By 1915, several states that had once relied on slavery had passed laws that allowed them to compel black individuals to work against their will. For instance, if someone was convicted of vagrancy, they could be forced into the convict lease system, a practice that generated significant profits for the wealthy white populace who profited from the labor of these convicted individuals. In this way, the legacy of slavery persisted, transforming rather than disappearing, embedding itself deeply in the social and economic structures of American life. Thank you for exploring this critical aspect of history with us. If you found this discussion enlightening, check out other videos in the Who Remembers series for more intriguing insights. Did I miss any key points? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and share this content with others who might be interested. Your engagement is invaluable, and I appreciate your support in uncovering these important narratives. Thank you for watching.
Food of slaves on plantations. Ever wonder how a cuisine born from scraps and hardship could become a symbol of cultural pride and celebration? Join us as we unravel the captivating story of soul food.